This broadcast is sponsored in part by Hendrick Automotive Group. Live from Charlotte, this is WBTV News on your side.
Now only on WBTV, editing the truth on coal ash. Our investigation has uncovered emails that show Duke Energy made changes to a scientific report.
I recognize that text that you're reading, and I wrote that.
How can you sit here in front of me and tell me that this email with these documents is something that you wrote when we have the evidence that that's not true?
Tonight, internal documents uncovered by WBTV are exposing the relationship between Duke Energy and the scientists paid by the company to research coal ash. Good evening. I'm Maureen O'Boyle.
And I'm Paul Cameron. For years, Duke has pointed to reports by two professors at UNC Charlotte as scientific evidence to support their assertion that coal ash does not contaminate groundwater, among other things. Duke has called the scientists' work independent. Now, documents uncovered by our investigative reporter Nick Oxner suggest the professor's work is anything but.
See how they changed the words? Look at that. And look at that. Look how much they added here.
Deborah Graham and Amy Brown are flipping through pages they say prove what they've suspected for years, as they've been forced to live off bottled water and fight against Duke's coal ash ponds right in their own backyards.
Their edit, arsenic was not detected. Who's the expert here?
What they're looking at is this email and a draft of this report written by a professor at UNC Charlotte for Duke Energy. Dr. Bill Langley was hired by Duke to study the impacts of coal ash on groundwater. This email from an engineer at Duke attaches a copy of Langley's report with highly suggested edits that appear to make substantial changes to the report.
That's not independent.
No, but we've always known that. We've always known.
We have.
We have always known that.
Yes.
But now this is proof, Amy.
This is proof. It just backs up what we've always
Duke continuously wants us to trust them and tells everybody to trust us, and we're here for you, and we're doing this out of being a good neighbor. But no, this isn't being a good neighbor.
That email and its highly suggested edits are just one example of what we found in thousands of pages of documents provided to WBTV by UNC Charlotte in response to a public records request. They show a pattern of Langley consulting with engineers and executives at the company as he conducted coal ash research.
They were given an opportunity to review that, and they made some edits to the text that was included in that summary that just made that summary more concise.
Langley rejects the notion that he let Duke Energy control his research, even as we showed him the email and report with Duke's edits.
That all sounds like my language.
Sir, this is added by Duke in the track changes and the highly suggested edits. This was added by Duke.
I recognize that text that you're reading, and I wrote that.
How can you sit here in front of me and tell me that this email with these documents is something that you wrote when we have the evidence that that's not true?
Now, I guess I haven't really seen, I don't acknowledge that that's evidence.
Independent scientists, not so much. They are definitely relying on Duke Energy for funding and doing work that Duke Energy has asked them to do.
DJ Gherkin is an attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. He's involved in lawsuits against Duke Energy involving the company's coal ash ponds.
Duke has hired consultants at private firms and at UNC Charlotte to answer the questions it wants answered. Unfortunately, those questions are self-serving for Duke Energy.
But Duke Energy spokesman Paige Sheehan denied the company has ever done anything wrong.
I think you're misleading people and misrepresenting robust scientific study that went through exactly the kind of review process that you would expect in any kind of research like this.
Deborah Graham and Amy Brown say this report and thousands of other documents uncovered by WBTV is more proof the company's hiding behind science it knows isn't true.
We've known for a long time that Duke is not been very truthful. And
you can't trust them.
I mean, you can't trust them.
Trusting Duke is dangerous to our health.
Now, in addition to the research reports prepared by Dr. Langley and edited by Duke, we found a second UNCC professor leading a so-called independent review board paid for by Duke Energy while helping the company craft its message for regulators at the same time. Guys, we'll have that part of our story tomorrow night at 6.
Certainly a long way from over, Nick.
Yes, our investigation continues.
All right, thanks so much.
New tonight, our investigation into the ties between Duke Energy and scientists paid by the company to research coal ash continues. We first told you last night about edits Duke made to a scientific report about coal ash.
The scientists behind that work claim to be working independently of the energy conglomerate, and so does a second professor who chairs a national advisory board created by Duke. But emails obtained by our investigative reporter Nick Oxer suggest otherwise.
Duke Energy's worked for years to figure out what to do with millions of tons of coal ash buried in ash ponds around North Carolina. It's agreed to excavate and move some of the ash to lined landfills. The company's fighting to keep others buried underground through a process known as cap in place. As it's navigated that process, the company's turned to advice from a group of scientists on the National Ash Management Advisory Board.
The people on that board are independent from Duke Energy.
UNC Charlotte professor John Daniels chairs that board. He wrote this letter in April 2016 to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality advocating against the state applying risk classifications to any of Duke's coal ash ponds. In the letter, Daniels goes out of his way to outline the fact that his board is independent of Duke.
You want a board to be independent, objective, and detached from corporate momentum.
But emails obtained by WBTV shows Daniels has consulted with Duke Energy while chairing the advisory board he claims is independent of the company. Take this calendar invite from April 13th of 2016, 1 week after Daniels' letter to DEQ spelling out his independence. It shows Daniels met with top executives at Duke to discuss an upcoming presentation to regulators at DEQ.
Best I can tell from looking at your emails, you were coordinating exactly with Duke while you're claiming to be independent leading this board. How do you square that?
So by virtue of doing this work, you have to engage with Duke. It's an advisory board for Duke.
Other emails show Daniels was included in an effort by Duke executives to draft a report for DEQ.
We work with Duke engineers so that everyone is clear on what people think and what that viewpoint is.
On one hand, you're telling DEQ you're totally independent of Duke. You have a board that's run by you, not by Duke Energy. And then you're going and you're helping Duke and its engineers craft its message for DEQ. The average person would look at that and say, that's not independent.
So we're not crafting the message. We're crafting what we believe to be our objective advice on the situation.
Duke has reassured its regulators and the public that everything is fine and has pointed to science and has pointed to scientists, saying these independent scientists have validated our assertions.
DJ Gherkin is a lawyer at the Southern Environmental Law Center. He's part of a team suing Duke over its coal ash ponds.
No, this is not an outside review. This is not an independent scientist, independent of Duke Energy's interests.
The advisory board advises Duke. Of course, we're going to work with Duke and present that activity to DEQ.
Both Daniels and Duke spokeswoman Paige Sheehan say they've done nothing wrong.
What you see in thousands of emails and other documents is the normal give and take that you should see in scientific work. It's exactly what you want to see in scientific work.
We should be looking at these scientists' assumptions carefully because they're working for Duke.
Reporting in Charlotte, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
We have posted much more of our investigation into the relationship between Duke Energy and professors it hired at UNC Charlotte online on WBTV.com, including some of the documents produced by the university that shows the interactions between Daniels and Duke.